Hey, everybody. I'm so excited to be here today with Nora Rahimian. And I just practiced saying her last name. And so I'm really glad that I was able to get it. So I have been looking forward to this conversation for a long time, everybody, because Nora brings such a interesting and important and powerful perspective on being an artist, being a creator in today's world, in a world that is really complex and complicated, and challenging us as individuals, as people, to think differently and to challenge the status quo of, what we've been told is the way to do things, or told, this is the only way to do it. This is what you need to expect. And so I'm really excited to have this conversation. But before we get going, I'd love for them to introduce themselves and bring us up to speed about who they are. So Nora, welcome. Why don't you give us a little bit of an idea of who you are and what you're all about?
Yeah. Oh, what's interesting is that you're asking me this question, and I know I'm supposed to be like, I'm an anti-capitalist business coach, and I produce the Hip Hop Festival, and I run Culture Fix, which is a global network of artists who do social impact work.
Yeah,
Uh, but that's not who I am and what I'm about, right? Who I am and what I'm about is overthrowing the systems of harm that we are all trying to survive. I'm all about community and culture. And so for me, everything that I do is a means to that
to
end.
that end, right?
Uh, so it's just interesting because I was so ready to give you the answer. And then I was like, wait, but I think it's also such an introduction to the conversation we're about to have. But
Yeah,
all that being said, I am an anti-capitalist business coach. I produce a hip hop festival. I run Culture Fix, which is this global network of artists doing incredible things around the world while trying to make the world a better place. I have a YouTube channel that's full of practical advice for independent artists. And so really everything, I take on a bunch of projects, but everything that I do is at this intersection of creativity and social impact and entrepreneurship in
yep,
the aims of making the world a better place for all of us, where we can just create and be artists
yeah.
and, do the things that we want to do.
And do the things that we want to do and that we were created to do. Um, I think that that reframe, or that little pause that you just had there about, wait a second, how am I going to answer that question, is, like you said, a good introduction even to the type of conversation that we want to have. Because so oftentimes that's how these conversations start, right? In our society, it's like, who are you and what are you about, automatically means like, what are you doing, what's your job, what are you putting out there, what are you like producing. um and you stopped, and of course you have that stuff that you just listed out, and all of it sounds really amazing, but you said, but really the purpose of who I am and what I'm about is to make the world a better place, to challenge the structures that have been in existence for so long and have become increasingly a disservice to all of us. And that is really, really kind of what you're about. Everything that you do then is just an outpouring or a branch of that larger purpose. Um, can you, just to set the stage for um, people who are listening to this, who might be new to some of the
Mhm.
ideas that you're bringing, um, can you set the stage for them, and for all of us, really, just so we're all starting at the same place, like what it means to be anti-capitalist in business or entrepreneurship, and how that is different than being in the regular flow of stuff.
Right. So, anti-capitalism does not mean that you don't get paid, and it does not mean that we can't have nice things. It means, which are the two like biggest,
I know.
misconceptions.
If I do this, am I going to be like poor all of a sudden, or am I going to be like, yeah, not able to make ends meet? That's not what it's about.
It's not what it's about. It's actually the opposite of that. It means that we are all compensated fairly for our labor, whether that's physical or emotional or intellectual or creative. So it's also expanding our ideas of what work and productivity and labor look like.
Right.
For many of us, we do like caregiving work or we do creative work, and that's not considered work. And so here you are at the end of the day, you've done all these things, you're exhausted, and
Yeah.
you're like, oh, but I didn't do anything today. What? You
So
took care of
much
the dog,
labor.
you raised
Yeah.
the kid, you checked on an elder, you showed up for your community, you made some art, you cleaned your house, right? Like all these things. And so the anti-capitalism is really about looking at the entire system and the big picture in which we operate, and realizing that there's just different ways of doing it, where the things that we've normalized, right? Grind, hustle, inequality, that those things don't have to be that way, and that there's other ways of doing it where we still get our needs met, where we still can have nice things, we can still indulge, but you treat people well in that process, and you treat yourself well in that process, right? That you are a human and not a robot for productivity, that our
Uh,
goal in life is not productivity.
yeah. Yeah. You're speaking to my soul right now because, you know, obviously, if anyone's watching the video part of this, like I'm a white cis presenting guy, right? And it's been like drilled into me that my worth is what I produce and how I provide, and yada yada yada, right? And like I'm so tired all of the time, and the work that I do is very others focused, but I'm always like, how can I do more of it? I need to do more of it. I'm not being productive enough. I'm not making enough money. I'm falling behind. What about this person over here who looks like they're making all of this more stuff, more money than I am, right? And like I always feel like I'm out of breath. Um, and the artist side of me, so there's the me that works with people, coaches people, provides therapy to people. There's that side of me, but then there's the artist side of me I'm a painter and I'm a maker in that way. And I don't feel like I ever have enough left to actually do that. And that was my first calling, right? As a person, is to be an artist. And at the end of the day, after I'm done showing up for everybody else and showing up and working, contributing to the workforce, like I have people on a staff too, right? I'm like, oh, I'm so tired. What is the point of all of this? And how
Right.
can I possibly get upstairs to the studio?
Right. Well, and you said something about like I can work, and then I start to compare myself to other people, and then I feel like I gotta work more.
Right.
And another piece of like white supremacist patriarchal capitalism
Yeah.
is that it puts us in competition with one another. And especially as creatives, I think oftentimes we think that there can only be one superstar, one icon, and the reality is we're not in competition with each other. And
Yeah.
so if you give yourself permission to focus on your relationship first with yourself, second with your art, and third with your fans and your audience in
Yeah.
that,
Mm,
then other creatives become allies, collaborators, partners, you know, co-conspirators, whatever you want to call them. And then there's a way that we can win together. Because if we're pitting ourselves against each other and we're thinking that there's only such a small, like small, what is it, that barrel of crabs mentality,
yeah.
it that takes a lot of energy. And so that's another piece of the anti-capitalism, is that we're actually all in support and community with each other, and we make better art that way, we reach more more fans that way, we grow bigger, we have more resources.
Right.
And so really pushing back against that competition piece can be really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, I see the competition piece in so many different corners of the world that I operate in. One of the areas that I operate in is within the mental health and therapeutic space with private practitioners. We're not going to get into on this podcast like a whole conversation about the structure of healthcare in the United States of America and all of that business, but I will mention that in the private practice space, therapists are required to, because of the structure and the system that we're in, to have like this business mindset, where we need to be attracting clients in order to like maintain our livelihood, which is providing therapy to people, providing counseling to folks. And one of the things that's really scary right now is big business, right? Like the place that everyone buys their stuff from, that's named after a forest. I don't want to say the name of it, but is coming out with like $99 a year, get therapy. And private practice people are like, one, that's going to be like horrible therapy. Two, oh my gosh, we're now in competition with this giant corporation that's eating everything in its path. Plus we're in competition, and so then because of that we're also in competition with each other. And I try to keep a really kind of level headed kind of mindset about it, in that like I'm not in competition with that guy and his gigantic situation over there. Like he's going to do what he's going to do and grow whatever, and people are going to go to him, and then they're going to get what they need or not. And then these other private practitioners that I'm with over here, they're not my competition either, because we all bring something very unique and special to the space, right? We all can't serve or help everybody. We're not going to be for everybody. And in the same way that that's true in that corner of my universe, it's also true in the art corner of my universe, which is my art speaks to certain people at certain times in certain places, and it's not going to be for everybody. So they have other artists to go to and collaborate with or collect from, and I can introduce those people to those artists, and we can have this really great back and forth relationship and dialogue with one another. But it's so easy in our world, Nora, to get sucked into the fear of, oh my gosh, there's this big monster out there who's going to eat me up, and I'm not going to have anything for myself.
Right. Well, and part of that is the more, part of the anti-capitalist perspective is to think of people as people, right? Like your customers, your audience, they're not robots, they're not dollar signs, right? They're people. And for better or for worse, one of the things with social media and having so many options is that there are a lot of artists and there are a lot of fans, and fans get to choose where they spend their time, their social capital, their energy. And so I think one of the things that we're seeing more of is a hyper niching of artists and fan relationships. So I can now choose exactly the artist that I want,
Right.
exactly the music that I can listen to. And I can choose where I put that money and my time and my energy and my social capital. And so it's, if you cultivate the human to human relationship, which is why, you're not going to be like, hi, I'm a musician, stream my music. You're going to say, hi, I make music. I care about dogs and saving the pandas. And then now as a fan, I find something emotional to connect with you with. And then the music comes next, right? Like if you think about whoever your favorite artist is, I'm sure their music is good, but the thing that makes you stand for them is everything else that they stand for and represent. And so, these corporations will be there and we should boycott them and they should unionize and they should really be regulated and taken off the face of the planet. But until then,
we have to figure out a way of
Right.
existing.
And so it's trusting that your audience will support you if you show up for your audience first. Right. And so
Mm,
that, like, it's really a relationship of mutuality and leaning into the hyper niching, which also then opens up ways of having different revenue streams and different definitions of success.
yeah,
Because the big companies, you're counting on like 1 million followers to make you $2.
right.
Well, if you're counting on 10 followers, those 10 followers are going to give you 10 whole dollars themselves, right? So it's just really thinking outside of the conventional box of what you've been told success is, and trusting that you and your audience can define for yourself what that looks and feels like. And my theory is that eventually that pushes out those companies that aren't doing anyone a service, but they're irrelevant because we're not in competition with them. It's about me, the artist, and you, my fan, and the relationship that we're cultivating here.
Right. Right. And you said something about, if you show up for your fans first, if you show up for your audience first, then they'll show up for you. How would you, I mean, and you've been talking about, being relational, building an emotional connection with the person that's sitting across from you or whatever. So I understand that. I guess I'm wondering, is there more to showing up for your fans first so that they then show up for you than than what we've just been talking about? Or is that pretty much it?
I mean, maybe getting into some like what does it mean to show up might be
Yeah,
helpful.
I think that's a good, yeah. Hello. Yeah. What does it mean to show up for these people and build
How
these
do we
emotions?
show up? How do we show up, right?
Yeah.
And it's things like, one, showing bits and pieces of yourself. And that doesn't mean you have to like put your personal life on but last and like, use your baby to get likes, but it's, what are the things that make you you, whether it's sports, whether it's art, whatever, and show that, right? So that people see a personality, because we connect to personality, we don't connect to a brand. So that's one. Two is speaking on the things that your audience is impacted by, which I think a lot of artists are like, oh, well, I might alienate fans, but that's okay, because you're not going to, right? We've been talking about, you're not going to be
Yeah.
for everybody, but when you speak up, you're going to, the ones who are going to like really show up for you are really going to show up for you. So speaking on things is two. And then three is just showing the process. Like, as creatives, we do so much work.
Yeah.
And then if all your audience sees is the product, well, that's cool, but they haven't seen the means of production and all the blood, sweat, tears you put in. And so making the invisible visible, showing how you record a song or how you're mixing your paints, or all the, like, I don't know if you're woodworking and like how you, I don't know anything about woodworking. So
How
it's a
you
weird,
sand things or
yeah,
like
how you see,
whatever. Yeah.
show
Yeah.
me the before and after, show me that you're studying, show me that you're meeting with a consultant, show me that
Right.
whatever it is, because then your audience sees the investment that you're putting in, and your audience will only be as excited as you are. So if you
Right.
show all the work, then they're going to show up and meet you halfway. But it really is, I think a lot of times people think, well, I just did the art, just support my art. But it's the other way around. You have to earn people's support, and you earn it
Mm,
showing up, by being a little vulnerable. It's right. It's like you're going to build a relationship with someone.
mhm.
You got to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with art.
Well, so yeah, like um one uh, coach that I worked with before um called this, or something similar to this, like a know, like, and trust factor, right? So people need to know you first. They need to know that you exist, right? Then they need to like you. So like they need to get to know, like, who is this person? Do I like them? Like, are they someone that I can kind of hang around with? And then trust is what they need to be able to like take that relationship further, right? Can I trust this person with, whatever it is that I'm coming to them for, that I'm hanging around them, or, or for the reasons that I'm hanging around them, right? So it's really important. You don't just automatically show up on someone's screen or on their phone or at some event and have their trust and buy-in right away,
Well,
necessarily.
Yeah, well, and especially if you look at the world that we're living in, right? Because this is the other piece is you have to understand what your audience is going through. And really like the question I give my clients is what problem are you solving for them? What are you offering them that no one else is offering? And so in a world where everyone like there's no housing, there's no healthcare, we're on the brink of another world, there's like genocide, like there's all this stuff
Stuff.
happening.
Yeah.
Now you're asking me in my very limited free time to take a risk on doing, interacting with your art that I don't know if I'm going to like it. I don't know how, or I could go to my tried and true same song that I've been listening to for the last month because and so there's like an emotional mental thing happening there. And so that's part of the trust is if you show me, if I like you, if I know you all, if we've done all that pre-work, then I'm going to be much more likely to take a risk on you, the newbie, right? The unproven one,
Right.
than going to where I know because my time is valuable and I have so little of it. And I can't handle another disappointment in a world of like stressful news cycles. And I know
Right.
that's maybe melodramatic because we don't consciously think of it that way. But we got like art is emotional. And so we go to art when we want something emotional. And if I don't know that I'm going to get that emotional need met from you, I'm going to go to where the sure thing is. And so that's
Right.
why the trust building, once you've built that trust, is smooth sailing. Like your audience
Yeah.
is going to be there, but you've got to put in that front end work so that I can take that risk on you and be emotionally vulnerable.
Right. No, it's so that's true. I'm just thinking about, like my own experience in the world right now and just being, regularly inundated with people's stories and listening to their trauma and helping them through that, and then going upstairs after I'm finished with the day, and like it's more of that stuff is just broadcasts in front of me. And then I go to the gym, and that's where I want to like pick things up and put them down and get rid of stress, right? But I also like listen to music then mostly. And you're right, what's going to make me feel better? Well, I know that this artist and this song is going to like help me focus, and it's going to make me feel better, and I'm going to feel more grounded and all of this kind of stuff. But I've been hearing about this other artist who supposedly has this really great new song out, or new album out, and like, man, I would like to, but like I have, like you said, like I have 30 minutes or 45 minutes right now, and I have to shift from feeling overwhelmed to feeling grounded in that 45 minutes. And am I going to put that time into this person who I haven't really seen what they're about other than hearing that they're good? And usually I might start a song then on this new artist, right? But then I'm like, this is not like, and I go back to the tried and true one pretty quickly. But if I have seen stuff that they've put out on their profiles, or like I've read something that they've written or an interview that they've given, and I can connect with their message, I'm going to stay with that new music maybe a little bit longer and give them a go, right? Because I've heard their heart, I've heard their story, I've connected with who they are as a person, and I'm willing, like you said, to give that time to them in hopes that they're able to help me feel better and be more connected to myself and the world around me.
So there is like a hack or a shortcut for this,
Oh, I like that.
which is word of mouth, right? If someone else that I already know, like, and trust says, Nora, you should check out this film or this artist or this installation, that fast tracks you to the top of my playlist because this person that I've already built the relationship.
Right.
So as artists, the other thing that I think is really important to do is to cultivate community amongst your supporters so that there's a relationship between you and your fan, but also a relationship amongst your fans, because then they will do a lot of the labor for you of, oh, you should check out da 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 da, this artist is the best, don't sleep on. And we've seen this with like so many stan armies.
Yeah.
um and like the power, both like creatively and politically, financially. They here in LA, like they named some, I think it's like some K-pop artist this animal was born. The animal looked like a K-pop artist, and so they raised
Okay.
a ton of money to name the animal after the K-pop artist. It was like
Okay.
the LSU's biggest fundraiser. Like, so we see that it doesn't have to be, if you build that community aspect, then a lot of the labor that you as the artist is doing in terms of marketing and comms and PR, now your fans are going to do it for you. And then you can step out and do the creative piece and just check in and still have that. So
Right.
community is the shortcut to all this, like, I mean, and none of us want to be on social media marketing. Like, no one enjoys that shit. Let's be honest. Like,
Right.
we don't want to think about how to hack an algorithm. You can't.
You
So
can't.
it's
Yeah.
so like community and building a relationship again between you and your audience, but then amongst your audience, like amongst themselves, build something really sustainable and long term so that you can focus on the things that really matter to you. Not to say your fans don't matter. Your fans should always matter, but the other stuff.
No, but yeah, like you're what you want to be doing, right?
Yeah.
You can get back to what you want to be doing and why, and like, the reason why you're cultivating fans, right? And I noticed that on social media too, like when you're trying to start a social media group or, community, it takes a lot of work and effort up front, right? It's really slow growing, and like you have to be really highly engaged with every person that's in that space. But after a while, right, after you've like planted seeds and you've engaged them and they start talking to each other, and then like I'm not managing those spaces all of the time. I can kind of take a step back and it's running itself, and I go in there and I like, of course I'm active in these spaces, but it's not all predicated on me doing all of that work anymore. But I've given them something that they can jive with. And, I'm finally starting to get back to doing more of those things in person,
Mhm.
which I'm so excited about, because I mean, staring at these like boxes all the time without like having real human interaction is really draining too. But I just ran with a friend of mine, um, we just had the first iteration of a new event that we're going to be trying to do. And it brought in like, a small number of people because it's the first time we're doing it. But these people had such a great time connecting with one another and just like really minimal programming and effort on the part of me and my partner. But they were like, I want more of this. I need more of this. And we're going to show up again and we're going to bring our friends. Right. And that's how this stuff gets going.
Yeah. And the number piece I think is really important. I love that you said like small number of people showed up, because I think sometimes there's a sense of shame around, I did this event and just a few people came, or I sent my newsletter but only 2 people opened it,
Right.
or did an Instagram live and it was just a handful of people. And that's okay. One, it doesn't make you any less of an artist, right? Like there's no numerical threshold that if you get this many likes, now you are official, like, right? That's like the algorithm trying to control our behavior. So you're an artist, regardless of if you ever sell a piece, do whatever. But that's how it grows. 2 people come and then those 2 people bring someone and then those people,
Right.
right? And it's organic and it's slow, but it's real and it's strong. And
Yeah.
that, and so I just think that's an important thing, that like there's no shame if your numbers are small,
Right.
and there's no embarrassment, right? Like there's no stigma.
Right.
And actually that's a great way to be like, yo, I did an event and 2 people came. Shout out to those 2 people who came and
Yeah.
can't see y'all next time. The rest of y'all, you missed
You
out.
missed out.
You
Right.
can really lean into it and celebrate, because that's the beauty of small, is it allows for real meaningful connection. Because the other, we talked about know, like, and trust. The other piece is people want to be seen, heard, and understood.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
if you can make each of your fans, especially those like initial people who just like love you and believe in you, if you can make them feel seen, heard, and understood, and you've got those 2 things happening at the same time, like that's the recipe for success right there.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So true. Um, I want to kind of ask a question. I see where you see where you land on this, and I think it's somewhat connected. Hopefully we can draw a connection to what we're talking about, but if not, it's just a hard turn. um I've been talking with a bunch of people online. I was actually just having a little back and forth with someone um who probably thinks I'm annoying now, but about like the idea of whether or not we're like being a content creator is a bad thing or not, or if you can actually differentiate yourself. Like if you're putting your stuff up on social media, you're a content creator, right? And it's where the differentiation comes. And what I was trying to, this person was like, well, I'm not a content creator because I'm not I'm not publishing things in a performative manner. I'm not like holding my painting and like turning around and like doing all like these things that are meant to like, hack the algorithm that we're not able to hack. um and so, but I'm doing this because I'm trying to keep track of, my progress. I'm trying to let people see my process. I'm trying to do some of these other things that you and I have been talking about. That's still content creation though, right?
It's a good question. I think there's a difference between content creation and being a content creator. So
Hmm.
all of us, right? From like the stay-at-home parent who's posting pictures of their kids for grandma to the influencer who's trying to get like that sponsorship. Every time we post, we're creating content for the only purpose to keep these apps well funded and alive. Right? Like it's not to build your business. And I think that's such an important distinction, because part of what that speaks to is that there are not places that's, at least in the United States, there's not places that support or facilitate creative discovery, creative connection. Like unless I actively go to a museum or I go to a show, we don't have cultural spaces that say, hey, look, artists can come and just exhibit. So social media fills this need, but it's actually, I think, taking away more from us than
Mm,
giving to us, even though we've been gaslit, right?
right.
Like, which is why, because if like the socials were really on our side, 100% of our followers would see 100% of our content.
Right.
They don't. Why? So that you can buy ads and do whatever, like reels, because
Right.
reels keep on the app longer
Right.
than, like, so I think it's important to distinguish between content creation, which we all do, and being a content creator, which for me is explicitly saying I'm getting my income or trying to get like, this is part of what I do. Because I think being a content creator requires you to please the algorithm rather than creating for the sake of creativity, or right, it does influence our behavior. We think, okay, if I post it this time, I'm going to get more views, so I'm going to do that. Or I did this kind of content and it did really well, so I'm going to do more
Do
of
more
that.
of it. Hmm.
uh, I'm a big believer in that capitalism is just really bad for creativity and innovation, because once you start to please the things that capitalism rewards rather than taking a risk or doing something so ridiculous and people aren't going to like it because you want to get likes. It's not, so there's something very restrict, like the freedom of creativity or exploration gets restricted when we're reliant on these algorithms. um and there's a lot of research being done about that,
Yeah.
right? About how
Right.
it impacts our behavior and like,
Yeah.
but I think that distinction is important, and it's rooted in this bigger systemic issue of, if we had affordable housing and healthcare, I wouldn't have to be a content creator because I could just make art and universal basic income would provide for my needs. And so, we could put things where they need to go rather than trying to like survive off of
Yeah.
yeah, you know what I'm trying to say.
Trying to survive off all of the little crumbs that are thrown out for us, and we all have to fight for it, right? And you said something else. This is just a really interesting conversation. I'm so glad that you're here having it with us. um you said something about capitalism being bad for creativity, being bad for innovation. Isn't what you saying that the direct opposite of what they said capitalism was supposed to do. Like capitalism was supposed to fuel innovation, right? And fuel like ideas and growth and all of that kind of thing, originally, right? But now you're saying like,
I,
has it always been that way, or has it gone sour here?
no, I think it's always been that way, right? And we've been told of free market is what creates, but only if it creates money,
Money.
right?
Yeah,
Only if,
okay.
and so we've learned not to value things that have a clear productivity impact or clear financial impact. So service labor isn't valued, creative labor isn't valued, care work isn't valued, community work isn't valued under that. Versus if we say, you know what, we're going to just value things that are valuable, and we can decide for ourselves what that looks and feels like, then, spending a day with my dog is really valuable. Or I could get really creative in terms of, there's something about only measuring success in terms of how much money we make, it
Right.
makes us,
Right.
that is really, really restrictive for multiple reasons.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Got to get away from all of our worth being what we are able to like put in
We
our
do.
pocket at the end of the day and do.
Yep.
Yeah. So as we start to wrap up here, like, are there some things that you can either reiterate or offer us again, or for the first time, artists, like, what can artists be doing to really challenge this notion of like capitalism being what they're how they're operating and what they're operating within, and how they can actually get back to, you know, being the makers that they are while still really truly needing to coexist with this
Yeah. Um,
brain that's on fire.
I think just asking like just questioning things. Do I really want this, or have I been told I should want this? Does this matter to me, or have I been conditioned to think that just, one of the ways that capitalism works is that it's so like incipient. Is that the word? It's like so there, and we
Yeah.
just assume it's hegemony. And so just questioning the nature of things is a really helpful way to start to unpack what's yours versus what's been given to you. And then decide for yourself. And I think this is especially like, well, at any time, it's a good activity to sit down and be like, what does success look like and feel like for
Yeah.
me? And
Right.
ask, work towards that. Build your community, find your collaborators, your colleagues, your allies. Think about what collaboration can look like. Be proactive and reach, hey, really liked your artwork that I saw. Like slide into people's DMs and just love on them.
Yeah.
Respectful. But
Respectfully. Yes.
like really build and participate in community. And then lastly, just remember that your worth is not tied to what you do, or how much you produce or how many likes you get,
Yeah.
but really, you're an artist because you are an artist. Like there's no qualifiers to that.
Yeah.
And you're worthy because you're worthy, and there's no qualifiers to that. And so capitalism tries to dehumanize us, and anything you can do to remind yourself of your own humanity, and then maybe pass
Mm.
that on to your community. That's, I think, really important and really powerful.
Yeah, that is. That is. And for some reason, so hard to remember and like integrate into our lives each day. Nora, so how can people, if they want to hear more from you, if they want to connect with you, maybe, find some coaching with you, how can people find you? Do you have any offers or anything that people can take advantage of right now? What's going on?
Yeah, so I'm at Nora Rahimian, NORARAHIMIAN, on all your socials. I have a really good newsletter. I don't spam you. I send you a ton of things, and I know my link tree will be in the show
Yep.
notes.
Yep.
Um, and then if you're interested in consulting, if you mention TJ's podcast, I'll give you $50 off your
Ooh,
first
nice.
sessions. So just mention TJ. And again, this is like collaboration. TJ coaches, I coach. We're not
Yeah.
in competition with each other. This is like
Right.
an alley, right? Like win-win. And so look at us like role modeling, right? We're not just preaching, we're
Right.
what we're preaching. But yeah, my DMs are always open. I do coaching and consulting. So like I said, $50 off your first 3 sessions with me. If not, sign up for the newsletter because there's a ton of useful information on there as well as on the YouTube. Or just slide in the DMs and be like, yo, I listened to your podcast and that
Yeah,
shit, or it was whack or whatever. I'd really like to hear from people.
that's awesome. And thank you so much for the generous reduction of your rate for those people who take advantage of it. It's really awesome. And yeah, that's right. Like everybody that I talk to, almost everybody that I have on the podcast does something like similar to me, but with a different flavor, with a different spin, right? Or they're just adjacent to me. But I want people to know all different types of folks because, like we were saying, all of us can't help every single person that comes our way, and different flavors of things work for different people. So totally, this is not competition. This is actually like collaboration, and I'm here for it. And so with that, Nora, thank you so much for your time and for your expertise and for your passion on these subjects. I know, this conversation really challenges me to think differently, and God knows that I need to think differently. A lot of times I like run into blind spots that I have all of the time, and I'm constantly being called out or called in for them. And I love learning. And so thank you for all of this. Everybody, this has been the Bold Creatives Collective podcast. It's hard out there. Let's support one another. Let's love one another and make the world a better place as best as we can. I'll see you all on the next episode. Until then, have a great one. See ya.